Just a quick rundown for those that may not know. So again, my name is Jay English. I'm the pastor here along with my wife, Sonia. And thank you. We appreciate that. For those that may not know me at all, we serve as the campus pastors here. And we also, in addition to this, have a nonprofit called Plain English, which is really crazy because Plain English was what got us here to Beach Park, which is a whole nother testimony. But we started 2 years ago doing sessions like this to try to bring people together around issues of race and culture. We saw the division, we saw the divide, we saw white churches and black churches go into their separate corners like they was in a boxing ring. And nobody was coming together in the middle except to fight. That gets us nowhere. And as the body of Christ, when the world is looking at you and y'all fighting over the same stuff they fighting over, what kind of power of Jesus are you trying to tell me y'all need to have? Amen. You lose all authority, you lose all power. If y'all can't figure it out, why you want us to figure it out too? So that was where this came from. It was, let's get involved in the problem. God has given specifically us a gift to speak and to be a bridge, to go between what I feel are different cultures and to be a bridge between them to bring people together. So if y'all haven't noticed, obviously I'm black. Have been that way for a long time. Will continue to be that way till Jesus gets done with me. If I ever turn another color other than this one, y'all get me looked at, okay? Please, because that wasn't done on purpose. Somebody did that to me, all right? Obviously, I married a Hispanic woman. Culturally, we're very different. But we learned and are still learning how to love each other in our differences so that our differences don't make a difference. Amen. That's the power of what we're talking about today. So for us to make our marriage work, I had to learn some things about her. I had to learn some things about her culture, things that were normal to her that were not normal to me. I had to learn things that meant something to her that maybe meant nothing to me, but it was important for her to have, vice versa. So today I'm trying to do that for us. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of clarifying points before we get started. Number one, I don't really do politics. I just don't. I really stay away from that. Politics, for me, is Satan's playground. He's having a field day in that area. And it amazes people that I can talk about all this stuff and still not be political because, y'all, it's not political. It's about human rights. It's about spirituality. It's about seeing people in God's image. And when you look at things that way, it's very easy to talk about them and not go Republican, independent, Democratic, all this other stuff that just, again, keeps us separated. So that's the first thing you won't hear me do. Number two, I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm not here to beat up white people. I'm not here to put black people on a pedestal. I'm not here to make Hispanic folks cheer and whoop. I'm not here for none of that. I'm here so that when we leave out of here, we're able to walk out of here better together. That's what this is about. My primary studies have been in the differences specifically with African-American culture. So you'll hear me refer to that often. But the things that you will learn, you can apply to so many different things. So we've gotten the major things out of the way. Here's the third thing. It's okay to laugh. This is a serious conversation, and some of the other places got it so serious that you can't do nothing but sit there and be afraid to say anything. This is not that place. I got news for y'all. Some of the differences between our cultures are hilarious. I'm just being honest. There are things that some of us do, and if I said it right now, black folks would be like, yeah, and white people would be like, I'd have never done that a day in my life. There's things Hispanics do that black folks many times can relate to. And then there's some other stuff they do, and I'm like, wait, why? White people, y'all got a whole nother, y'all do stuff different than all of us. And you know what's great in this house? All of it comes together and we take the best out of any of it and use it. That's why this church works. That's why God blesses us. That's why he continues sending people, because we don't really care what culture gets lifted up as long as the culture of Jesus is magnified. That's the one that really matters. How we portray him in our community, though, will be based on the cultures that comes in the door. So if I take something that worked really well in the Hispanic culture and something that really worked well in the black culture and that really worked well in the white culture, we mix it all together in the same pot, we come up with something that works really well in a lot of places. And sometimes if we're going to deal with a specific culture, we have to let the cultures that understand that culture take the lead. Quick example, we're talking about doing drive-through prayer. You may not realize 56% of Waukegan is Hispanic now. So guess what? We need people that speak Spanish to help us with drive-through prayer. Because you don't want Pastor Jay over there with his 3 sentences in Spanish. They be like, yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And I took 3 years too. No. I can ask you where the bathroom is. I can tell you where my house is at. And I can tell you, me amo Jaime. That's all I got for you. If that what gets us through the prayer I'm good. But typically, that's not it. So again, you can laugh. We're going to have a good time. You can ask questions. I'm going to give you truth. I'm going to give you information. I'm going to give you Bible. Because I think at some point, we've all heard this phrase. We've heard this verse. Come now, let's settle this, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them white as snow. Though they're red like crimson, I will make them white as wool. Has anyone ever heard that before? So many of us, if you've grown up in church, you've been around pastors, you've heard this message preached, you've heard folks quote it, you've heard people talk about it, they've used it for altar calls, all that stuff. Well, can I tell y'all rule 101 for Bible study? Read all the verses around it. Can I tell y'all how mad I got when I grew up, got grown, and read all the verses around it? And realized all these pastors that have been preaching me this stuff either hadn't read the verses or chose to ignore them. I'm going to read this one more time. Come, let's settle this, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them white as snow. Though they're red like crimson, I will make them white as wool. Well, for me, when I'm doing Bible study, the first thing I want to know is, what are my sins that are scarlet? You says, I will make them white as snow. What is them? What are the things you're talking about? Though they are red. What's red like crimson? I will make them white as wool. Okay, Jesus, I hear you. Now I want to ask the question, what are the things that you're talking about? So let's look at the rest of this verse and see what God was saying in Isaiah. So in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 11, going back, it says, what makes you think I want all of your sacrifices? God has an attitude. I'm sick of your burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fattened cattle. I get no pleasure from the blood of bulls and lambs and goats. When you come to worship me, who asked you to parade through my courts with all your ceremony? Stop bringing me your meaningless gifts. This incense of your offerings disgust me. You know, we preach about, offering God a sweet smelling aroma, right? And here he's saying, yeah, that the stuff you offer me right now actually disgusts me. As for your celebrations of the new moon and the Sabbath and your special days for fasting, they are sinful and false. I want no more of your pious meetings. I hate your new moon celebrations, your annual festivals. They are a burden to me. I can't stand them. You know, when you're doing all that stuff and you think you're doing it for God. When you lift up your hands in prayer, I won't even look. Though you offer many prayers, I will not listen, for your hands are covered with the blood of innocent victims. And the verse right before says, wash yourselves, be clean, get your sins out of my sight. Well, God, what are my sins? Give up your evil ways. God, what are my evil ways? He says, learn to do good. Seek justice. Help the oppressed. Defend the cause of orphans. Fight for the rights of widows. Oh, then when we go back and we see this verse, though your sins are like scarlet, I will make them white as snow. Because I haven't been learning to do good. My sins that are red as crimson, I haven't been seeking justice. Oh, I will make them white as wool. Because you know what you haven't been doing? Helping the oppressed. Defending the orphan, protecting the widow. That scripture takes on a whole new connotation. People will sit here and look at me in my face and try to tell me the Bible does not talk about social justice. And I ask them, what Bible have you been reading? Seriously, because people really want to argue with me, and I don't do arguments. I do facts. Show me in the Bible where it don't say that, because I got a bunch of them to do. Oh, then I got folks, well, that's the Old Testament. That's the Old Testament. You know, we don't live, Pastor Jay, we don't live under the Old Testament no more. Oh, we don't. Oh, okay. Huh. Matthew 23 is in the New Testament, right? New Testament, okay. Jesus, we all know Jesus. Everybody know Jesus? Jesus, from his lips. Matthew 23:23. What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees? Hypocrites! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe. But check out what he says. Don't neglect the more important things. There's something more important than tithing? Now, y'all look, this ain't Pastor Jay's words, okay? This is Jesus. Don't neglect the more important things. Yes, you should tithe. Yes, you should be faithful to your church. Yes, you should be a giver. Yes, you should volunteer your time. That's wonderful. That's great. Religious figures do that everywhere. But I got news for you. We don't want to be a religious church. And I don't want to be a pastor of a religious church. I want to be a pastor of a church that Jesus says you care about the more important things, such as justice, mercy, and faith. That's why I do this wherever he opens the door. That's why I push people and challenge them to pay attention to what the full Bible tells us. Stop picking and choosing. It's something in there for every last one of us. So here's the thing. Our nonprofit and what we do in ministry, period. If you catch me and Pastor Sonia, these are the 5 points of our life that we care about. Things outside of this, I don't pay too much attention to. This is my life's calling. I'm going to do everything possible to learn how to treat people well. I ask questions. I try to spend time with folks. I try to figure out, how do you like to be spoken to? How do you like to be worked with? What works best for you if I've got a problem? Why? Because I want to learn how to do good by you. I'm committed to seeking justice. I want to see the right things happen to the right people, and I want to see the right things happen to the wrong people. When I speak of social justice, if you ever hear that term come out of my mouth, I am not speaking of equal outcomes. I'm speaking of equal access. Equal outcomes is based on how bad you want it. Equal outcomes is based on how hard you're willing to work. Equal outcomes is based on how much sleep are you willing to go without to get what you want. Equal access means I want opportunities to have the same education you have. Equal access is, I want high-paying jobs in my community. Why do I have to drive all the way to yours? Amen. Equal access is, can I get a grocery store in North Chicago? Amen. Equal access. So if you hear me ever talk about social justice, we're talking about access, because we all know that if you live in certain zip codes, you are more likely to have a certain type of education than if you live in others. That's not equal access. If you live in certain zip codes, you're more likely to have healthier food options than if you live in another one. That's not equal access. Now, if we give you equal access and you steal 450 pounds, that's your fault. You're not expecting equal outcomes. The person that goes and works out every day at the gym, looking nice, tight, and fit, and you walking around sitting on your couch 48 hours a day, you're probably not going to have the same outcomes. Make sense? Access. You both can go to the same gym that's 5 miles away from your house. Outcomes. He did it, you didn't. That's what social justice is. That's what it's supposed to be about. Not all this other stuff that they're throwing out here. And again, Satan is having a field day. So we look to help the oppressed. Those that are navigating spaces where they're not able to move forward in a way that should be accessible to anybody that is living and breathing. We want to defend those that can't defend themselves. This is why here at this church, we've said that our 3 pillars are going to be children, teenagers, and single moms. Why? Because in James it says perfect religion, if you really want to get into it in the heart of God, is to take care of widows and orphans in their distress. We will be that church. We just want to align ourselves with God. Why is it easy here? Why do things grow? Why do things work? Because we get out the way and just align ourselves with what God wants. We challenge him with his word. Lord, you said you want to take care of widows and orphans. We want to do the same thing. Let's partner. And he says, that's all I wanted. I'll send you whatever you need as long as you line up with what I said I want to do. And the last thing is we want to fight for those without a voice. Very simple. Widows, back in the Bible, women that didn't have husbands had no voice. Many of them died because they had no means of taking care of themselves, which is why they would typically marry the brother of the husband who died, because they needed the protection, they needed the covering, they needed somebody to take care of them. So we have to be a church that fights for the rights of those that don't have a voice. We have to use our ability, we have to use our numbers, we have to use what God is blessing us here with to challenge the status quo in areas where there's not equal access, which means we get to knock on the mayor's door, which means we get to have conversations with our aldermen, which means that as we put programs in place, we go to them and expect them to support it. Hey, all of the money don't have to come from Journey. Y'all got a budget too. So these are the reasons why we're here. Now this picture, I'm going to leave that sitting there for just a moment. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's my grandfather who's 94 years old now that's still living to this day. Some of you have seen this photo on Facebook. That's my cousin Caleb, and they're in a cotton field. Because there's people that will tell me, Pastor Jay, the stuff you fighting about, this was hundreds of years ago. Why you even worried about it? No, this wasn't hundreds of years ago. I still hear stories. I was just with him last week. He can tell me about growing up in Mississippi and about how the young man in this next city over was dragged behind a car till he died. Why? Because he was black in Mississippi. Oh, he can tell me stories. Oh, he has. So when we say the term Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that black lives are more important than any other lives. Let's just get that lie right out right now. Amen. And Satan been having a field day with that. They trying to say they more important. No, we not. We're not more important. We want to be as important. I want my life to matter as much as the next person who's not black. Well, why do we feel that way? Well, because black people's lives historically have been undervalued. And I'm just speaking historically. When you look across all of our history, you can see that there's been divisions. There's been things that have gone on that have led people like myself to believe, am I important? Yes. But if you put me up next to somebody else, would I be as important? No. Haven't felt that way. Have had things happen to me as I was standing to somebody else that was of a different color and watched it happen to me anyway and not happen to them. Oh, that'll really mess you up. I've been removed from public property for being suspicious. The only suspicious person there was the one black person in the room with all the white people. I've been pulled over for fitting the description of criminals. I've been accused of drug trafficking. I got pulled over for stealing my own car. I can go down the list, y'all. My own car. Whose car is this, sir? Mine. Well, I saw you come out and get in it. That's what people do. And y'all, I be trying not to be like smart mouth, but I'm like, you watched me leave my house and get into my car and drive off. People do that every day. Well, I saw it running before you got in it. Do people not start their cars before they get in them where you live? It's called an automatic starter. Oh, I got stories. Oh, I got stories. Things that have happened. And as I told you about this picture, this is my grandfather actually teaching my cousin about how his worth as a black man was determined by how much cotton he could pick in a day. Maybe you don't know about Dred Scott. Mr. Scott was a slave in the 1800s, him and his wife, and their master was one that would travel often. And of course, he wanted his slaves with him. Why would I do all this work? So he traveled all over the place, but the thing was, he traveled through states where slaves should have been free. Of course, he didn't tell them that. Years later, Dred Scott somehow finds out about these states, and there's a law at the time that says, hey, if you make it to these states, you can't be taken back into slavery. And he's like, hey, time out. We was there, and there. I want my freedom. Well, his master said, no, you here with me. Dred Scott sued. That thing went all the way up the chain. Went to our Supreme Court. So there was a gentleman I got into a conversation with, and he was telling me that there's a phrase in our Constitution that says, hey, we believe it is self-evident that all men are created equal. And he was like, that's the foundational principle that our country was built on. And that applied to everybody. And I said, brother, have you read about Dred Scott? And he got quiet. Why? Because our Supreme Court in 1857 said, hey, we think that they, the people of African ancestry, are not included. Were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and therefore can claim none of the rights and privileges that instrument provides for and secures for the citizens of the United States. People didn't know this. At the time, our Supreme Court put this ruling out for everybody to see and everybody to know. Not only did this not give Mr. Scott his freedom, but they took away the rights of African Americans to even sue for wrongs done against them. Because you're no longer a citizen. And citizens are the only ones that have rights to legal proceedings. So now, no matter what happens to you, no matter if you're arrested, no matter if you're picked up by whoever says that you were a slave, even if you're in a free state and they kidnap you and drag you back, you have zero recourse because you're not even really a citizen. You can't sue. There is no court of law for you. This really happened. This is real. Let's talk about another one, Plessy versus Ferguson. People definitely know about Rosa Parks. Aha, what's that fuss? I know y'all, some of y'all know about that. Rosa Parks, who sat on the back of the bus, sat on the front of the bus, and they wanted her in the back. And she said, no, I'm not going. Well, I got news for you. There was a brother that did that long before she did. Mr. Plessy right here, this man got tired of having a black train seat. Because see, back then, they had a whole train car just for black people. And he said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going. I'm sitting right here. And y'all already know what happens when black folks do stuff that they ain't supposed to do in certain societies. They came and arrested him. And this thing got taken to court. And again, in a landslide decision, they made a decision that this ruling called separate but equal is okay. Separate but equal, what does that mean? As long as we provide you with separate accommodations, it's still equality. Now, the funny part was our accommodations wouldn't look like the accommodations of everybody else. Our train car would have holes in it. That bad boy would be wind blowing through there, rats running around, everybody else sitting nice and plush and clean. We sitting on the dirty side, but it's separate, but it's equal because you've got access to a train just like they do. This is where, for my mother who was born in the 50s, segregated bathrooms, segregated water fountains. My previous church, I was a youth pastor. I had a young lady, and I say young figuratively. She was one of my best youth leaders. In her 80s, she joined us. She talked about going to the movies and having to sit upstairs. Because black people, that's where you got to sit. You couldn't go downstairs. You're like, we had our own entrance. We couldn't go around front. We had to go through the back alley and up the stairs. Just telling things about separate but equal and how that has affected us subconsciously through the years. Amen. Some people have lived through this. Some of you have possibly seen some of these things. Maybe you didn't think about it, or maybe you lived through it and you've experienced this firsthand. Jim Crow laws. Slavery is over. We've passed the 13th Amendment that allows African Americans to become citizens. So what starts to happen is, even though they have citizenship rights, people create new laws that keep us from having equal access. Jim Crow, and everybody has heard the term Jim Crow, this was actually a character in a minstrel show. So if you don't know what a minstrel show is, back in the day, people would get together and dress up and put blackface on and emulate African Americans and make fun of them, and this was a comedy. These things would travel the nation. People would pay big price tickets to go see these things. One of the famous characters was a character named Jim Crow. So they would even refer to black people as Jim Crows. And then the laws were based off of the slave laws that they used to have back in the day. So it would keep people that looked like me from having access to home ownership, access to education, access to jobs, access to business ownership, access to voting. Not being able to vote, because I got news for you. You can't vote, you can't change nothing. Status quo stays the same. So there were communities back in the day. We want white tenants in our white community. This was a big thing. So a lot of people want to know, like, hey, why don't If you ever look at census or look at data as far as demographics, you typically will see huddle points of minorities. And no matter where you can go to any state, you'll see where we all tend to huddle. And people are like, why all the folks live right there? Got news for you, because we weren't allowed to live nowhere else. There are things called cultural covenants, where if you wanted to be a business developer and you wanted to build houses, you wanted to build land and lease things, you had to sign these covenants as a developer that said, I will not sell or lease any of my property to minorities. Minorities included African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans. We can go down the list. So we were only able to live in certain areas. We could only purchase in certain areas. And typically, we couldn't even purchase with a loan. We had to save up with cash. I am 2 generations in for using a bank. I want you to think about that. I'm the 2nd generation in my family that has access to a bank. So when people talk about financial literacy, financial knowledge, equity, loans, all this stuff, my grandfather didn't start using a bank till he was in his late 30s. My grandparents on my father's side never used a bank. My grandma over there kept all the money on her underneath her dress. Why? Because she grew up in Alabama. Ho-ho. Black people put money in the bank in Alabama, you liable to come back and they be like, what money? You don't have any money here. But I got tickets, You don't have any money. Matter of fact, police. So we wouldn't put money in the bank. We would keep money at the house. Well, what's happening with money at the house? It's not growing. But at least I still have it. Hiding it under the mattress, putting it in holes in the floor. These are not myths. These are real. My grandmother had a money belt. Every morning she pulled the money out from underneath the mattress. She put it on her belt underneath her dress, and she went to work. Second generation bank user, y'all. Your pastor. Antilynching. Now we know the numbers will never be completely accurate. Between the years of about 1865 and 1960, there was over 4,000 reported lynchings. A majority of those were of African Americans. And I say reported, because I got news for you. I guarantee you that number is much higher. Jesus would have to be the one to let us know, but I guarantee you it's higher than that. Here's the thing that people don't know and don't realize. There was a gentleman back in 1920 by the last name of Dyer who tried to pass a law to get lynching made into a federal hate crime. So I want you all to think about this. My grandfather was born in 1928. My father was born in 1934, somewhere around there. 1944, something like that. And then my mother was born in 1953. 1921, they start trying to pass this anti-lynching law. Why? Because lynching is bad. But for whatever reason, it's not a federal crime. They leave it to the states to handle. And you know what the states would do? Help. Lynch people. There would be no recourse. There would be no repercussions. Law enforcement would be the ones allowing mobs into the jailhouses to take people out to go lynch them. So Anthony Dyer tries to pass this law to get this moved into a federal court of law because obviously the states are not taking care of it. Anybody want to take a guess of how long it took to get the anti-lynching law passed? Come on, somebody, give me a number. 30 years. 30 years, okay, somebody else. 47. 48. He gonna take you, he did you like the Price is Right. He just X'd you out of everything underneath. Anybody else? How many years? 54. 54. 62, 56. Y'all, would you believe me if I told you that we finally got an anti-lynching law passed in 2020? It took us 100 years to convince our government that lynching people should be a federal crime. Think about that. Because I'm still trying to explain to you why sometimes I feel like my life don't matter. We getting a lot of other stuff passed. Oh, y'all can get rid of all these books. Quick. Oh, we can change them laws. Oh, that can happen. Can we get rid of this lynching? Law after law, bill after bill. 1921 took us to 2020, February of 2020. The first anti-lynching bill was passed. They call it the Emmett Till anti-lynching law. 2020. What year is this, y'all? 2022. This just happened. 100 years. For something that I feel should be really simple. Hey, if somebody lynched me, please prosecute the fire out of them. And don't trust this bootleg state to do it. I need federal crimes. This is why I was so hung up on Ahmaud Arbery, because I'm like, this got to be a federal thing. They modern day lynched that young man on the street, killed him, and walked away, went home. No report was filled out for them. They were not accused of anything. They were not held of anything. I'm just telling you all, when I'm watching the news and I see stuff like that happen for a young man that was literally just jogging through a neighborhood, it makes me feel like my life might not matter as much. It took for the video to get leaked. That was a move of God, I promise you. Because the clown who leaked it was the guy who was following the cars, helping chase him. I just want to show everybody how in the right we were. His words. Come on. That happened in this era. Let's talk about this a little more. Anybody heard of Sundown Towns? Let me explain to you what Sundown Towns are, because this is why a brother like me is scared to go to certain places and to drive through certain neighborhoods at certain times of day and night. Sundown Towns were known as places where minorities could not be after sundown. They would kill you with no recourse. They would look for you. Police would follow you to the city limits as the sun went down, hoping you didn't make it. People were killed. Now, this is Wisconsin. You see all of these orange marks? These are all former sundown towns. Some of these existed all the way up to the 1980s. Y'all, I was born in 1980. Can I tell y'all something? Some of them still exist. Because at certain places, I don't go. And then I'm in interracial marriage. Oh, Jesus. As if I don't get enough looks. We had some friends of ours told us they were going to take us to Door County for a vacation. We laughed. I said, you don't take minorities to Door County? Oh, man, it ain't like that. You trying to be funny. I'm like, I'm really not trying to be funny. I'm really serious. Like, we really don't go north for, vacations. Like, we really don't. Man, that's all in your mind. Folks ain't like that no more. Okay, we went. My lovely white friends. Now, these is people I would fight right now for. But they decided it was a good idea. They took me and my wife, as black as I am and as Hispanic as she is, and then went and found another couple with a Puerto Rican and an Asian. We was in United Nations walking up in Door County. Hey, they took us to this restaurant. I'll never forget it. It was a restaurant that had sheep running on the top. This is how I knew I was not in the hood no more. It was sheep on top of the restaurant, like real ones, live ones, hopping on the roof. And I'm like, black folks don't do stuff like this, okay? We don't go places like this. We walk in the restaurant, and instantly everything stopped. And everybody like, watching us just walk in like we unicorns. I've never seen one in real life before. They really do exist. It was unbelievable. My friend who decided this was a great idea, he's feeling awkward. Now, y'all know me at this point, it's already awkward, so we might as well just be awkward. I'm sitting there eating. I said, this what you like, right? This what you want? All this attention? This what you like? Because I'm used to it. You're not. This happened to me all the time. Matter of fact, I told you this was going to happen, and you brought me here anyway. Then, what made him real uncomfortable was when I told him, and when I go to the bathroom, you coming with me. I ain't going to the bathroom with you. Oh, brother, yes, you are going to the bathroom with me, because I tell you what I'm not doing here in Door County, going to the bathroom by myself. I shouldn't have to make decisions like that as a grown man. But I do. And I'm smart enough to do it. My pride go out the window when I go certain places. Folks be like, I thought only women went in groups. No, when we in Door County, everybody, let's go. I got to pee. Everybody coming. Stand outside this stall and don't you let nobody in here. I'm going home. Because I've had some experiences. And I don't want no new ones. So I have to be careful. And people be like, Pastor Jay, it's all in your mind. Oh, no, I done had enough stuff happen. It ain't in my mind. No, it's in their mind. And I'm going to keep it in their mind and not on my body. This is how I have to think. Why? Because I want to be safe. And certain places have proven I don't need to be. This is Illinois. Former places that were known as Sundown Towns. All around Bloomington and Peoria, Rantoul, and all these places, all these little cities. Oh no, my GPS be looking at me like, you can go this way and cut off an hour and a half off your time. I'm like, nope, it ain't worth it. I will sit in the traffic. We did that one time. We went on a trip. I was dumb. It was an 8-hour trip, and that thing told me it could get me home in 6.5. Yes. No. Some of the places I went through, I looked at Sonia and I said, if you got to pee, we got cups. We not stopping. We gonna pray for no tire problems, no issues. Thank God the gas tank is full because we not stopping. Some of them places we went through, and I'm just being honest, these are things we literally have to pay attention to. I can't just vacation anywhere. I can't just go anywhere and hang out. I can't just go to any restaurant and just think I'm gonna be fine because I've learned I can't. Many of you maybe have never heard of something called the Red Summer of 1919. I want you to think about this for a second. We've got such amazing gaps between minorities, and specifically Caucasians. There are gaps in housing, there's gaps in wealth, gaps in economics and education. We can go down the list, there's gaps. This is how some of those gaps have gotten there. Every last one of these dots, every one, represents an African-American community that was wiped off the map in 1 year. The year of 1919, what happened was segregation was rampant. African-Americans were not allowed to live with Caucasians. So they would relegate us to the outskirts, to the worst areas of town, to, outside the city, out in whatever rural area. That's where we had to live. So we would come together with our lack of education, lack of knowledge. But the one thing we did have? A whole lot of creativity and a whole lot of ability to use our hands. Why? Because we had been slaves. So the one thing slaves knew how to do was take care of stuff. We knew how to plant, we knew how to build, we knew how to fix, we knew how to work with animals, we knew how to do all of that stuff because this is what we've been doing. We knew how to eat stuff nobody else wanted. People want to know why African-American diet looks the way it looks. Go back. That's what we were given and allowed to eat. Why would y'all eat chitlins? Chitterlings. Maybe you've heard it that way. Why y'all eat chitlins? That's pig intestines. Yes, because that was the only part of the pig we'd be given. The parts nobody else wanted. We were given that, and then we, being who we were, figured out ways to make it taste halfway decent. And when you grow up on certain stuff, after a while, it ain't even halfway decent. Mama, this good. Pig feet, pig ears, hog maws, chicken feet. Who want to eat chicken feet? We did, and we do. Because we grow up. Southern cuisine, a lot of that came from slavery. Just making what you could based off of what you were given. So this summer, what would happen is African Americans would get together and build their own economy and make the surrounding towns jealous. They shouldn't have that. They shouldn't be making that much money. They're doing better than we are. Mobs would form and wipe out entire communities. Burn every building, killing mothers, daughters, men, sons. Think of all of the knowledge that was never passed down. This is 1 year. All of these dates, January 26th, each of these dates is a different massacre. The 22nd, February 8th, March 12th, March 14th, April 10th, April 13th, April 14th. Can you imagine being a minority living in a community knowing this type of mess is going on? That at any point in time, it could be your house, it could be your family, it could be your community next. And then think of the wealth that was never passed down. Think of the training, the knowledge. Got news for you. It's a bunch more dates too. Over 60 communities, 1 year. We know about the one in 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, because the movies have started putting that out. I got folks that they just found that out because they was just watching a certain show last year. Tulsa, Oklahoma was 2 years after this. Tulsa, Oklahoma, the #1 black surgeon in the nation died on the first day. Tulsa, Oklahoma, they were so rich, they owned more airplanes individually than the entire state had. These African Americans struck oil, literally. It was like the Beverly Hillbillies, like for real. And they built their own businesses. They built their own everything. Think of the knowledge a pilot could have passed down to his son. Think of the homes that would have been passed down, the equity that would have been built, the education that would have been given. All of that eliminated. And not lost, eliminated. Mama can't tell her story and pass down her knowledge if she's dead. This is how you start creating some of these gaps. Let's talk about some other gaps in our legal system. Again, I'm just giving you things that is readily available that you can find anywhere and look into. 1986 was the year where we really started seeing African Americans going to jail in numbers that made 0 sense. You want to talk about decimating the household? Now, can I tell you all and be honest? Crimes deserve to be punished. Equal access, though. This was not equal access. They called it the war on drugs. And in the war on drugs, the idea behind it was wonderful. We want to get rid of heroin. We want to get rid of cocaine. We want to eliminate the usage. The idea is amazing. It was how they decided to do it that I have a problem with. So here's what would happen. They actually built 2 different laws and they passed them. The first law was representing, have you heard of crack cocaine compared to powder cocaine? Now y'all look. Crack is crack, okay? It's the same, it do the same stuff. You're going to have the same reaction. It's the same chemical. One was in a solid form, one was in a powder. What you typically found was the solid form was in the minority communities. The powder was typically in the Caucasian communities. So what they did was they passed this law and they said, if you have crack cocaine, the solid version, you need 5 grams for an automatic minimum sentence of 3 years. 5 grams. Okay, got you. Powder cocaine, you need 500 grams. Why don't you just think about this? We doing a war on drugs. We gonna get the drugs off the street. And all the people doing them. Well, one form of this, 5 grams is gonna send you away. The other one, you need 100 times as much of the same product for you to get the same sentence. That's a disparity that kills communities. That is a disparity that kills families. Because I'm not fighting for the fact that these brothers did something wrong and went to jail. That's not my issue. My issue is they should have had a lot more company. Or they should have had a lot more leniency. One of the two needs to be true. Either way, it needs to be equal. But this is why you see things, because whether you realize it or not, and I've done my fair share of work in this type of stuff, there are laws that are on the books in many cities that are enforced very differently based on where you are. The law exists. It's absolutely on the books. It's absolutely legit. They can give you a number for it. It's represented well. You can find the bill where it was passed. But it's enforced very differently based on where you are at the time or what you look like. This was just one example of that. I want to show you this because I told y'all I've been pulled over too many times for stuff that don't make no sense. A study in May of 2020, so this is very current, 95 million traffic stops. 56 police agencies between 2011 and 2018 found that while black people were more likely to be pulled over than whites, the disparity actually lessened at night. So first and foremost, they realized when folks can't see who's actually driving, we notice the numbers change. The study also found that blacks were more likely to be searched after a stop, though whites were more likely to be found with illicit drugs. Another one, 2019, this was in Los Angeles. They found that 24% of black drivers were searched compared to 16% of Latino. Y'all doing a little better than us, not a whole lot. They think you slightly less likely, but not much. 5% of Caucasians, but they also found they're more likely to find drugs not on us. But you would never know that by watching the news. Amen. They actually found out we less likely to have anything on us. At a clip of 24% to 5, they actually found that it was more likely that some of my white brothers and sisters, I was like, y'all need to go to Lake Forest and just start pulling folks over. Get some of these drugs off the streets. They did another one in Connecticut in 2017, and they found that even though the racial disparity had narrowed, they found that 19% of searches of black motorists turned up contraband versus 29% of searches for white motorists. Look, y'all, we have a problem with drugs. What I'm saying is the way things are pointed at specifically the African-American community and African-Americans in general. We have to be careful. These are still people. These numbers represent some truths that, the funny part is we know these truths are real because this has been studied and done. But it doesn't change the reality of what many people face and deal with. And these are just some of the things that are out there that we know have happened. Let's talk about our legal system. Here's something that's really crazy. When black men and white men commit the same crime, so let's say me and Josh Dozer decide we're going to rob this bank. We got the same Journey t-shirt on. We going to get the same ski mask. We in the same car with the same caliber gun, with the same shoes. We rob the same bank on the same day and stick up the same person for the money in the bank. We gonna split it. When they catch us, I'm gonna get a 20% higher sentence. You better check my record first. Which probably means it was his idea we robbed it in the first place. Here's the thing, the research actually controlled for variables such as age and prior criminal history. So this was more or less even. And what they realized is that people that look like me are going to get 20% higher sentences. These are some of the things you need to be aware of as we're doing prison ministry. As you're connecting with people that are coming out of prison, that will show up at this church looking for Jesus. And they'll tell you they have a past. And can I tell y'all something? We all got a past. Every last one of us caught a case. It's called sin. And death was the price, and Jesus paid it. So we should be able to love anybody regardless of where they come from or what they have in their past record. Because you got one too. Some of y'all, some of us should have had more time than they did. We just didn't get caught. Here's something that's crazy, even as we're dealing with teenagers. While black youths make up 14% of the youth population, they found that they actually make up 53% of the minors transferred to adult court. 53%. Despite the fact that it's virtually even between youths charged with those type of offenses. These are realities of what we're dealing with in this community. And you need to know that. You need to realize that. So how do we help our young people not end up in this system? Because we know that if they get a hold of you, you're likely to end up someplace without the opportunity somebody else might have. I tell young men, specifically the black and brown ones, you can't afford to get caught up in this system. You can't afford to. You have to make some different choices. But to make different choices, they have to be given options. We have to be a church that gives options. Again, access to a different life. I can't make you take it. If you still end up in jail, that's on you. But it won't be because we didn't give you the option of doing something different with your life. of doing something more, of having the help you needed, of having access to good jobs, of having the ability to get a job, period. That's the type of church we need to be because we realize that these things are true. Let's talk a little bit about black on black crime. I'm sure you've heard that before. Believe it or not, we actually do care about our communities. We've got a community in North Chicago that is like 97% African American. That's in our wheelhouse, y'all. It's up the street, not too far away. 90% of African Americans are killed by other African Americans, but 83% of white folks is killed by other white folks, but we don't never hear about white on white crime. Hey, when the last time y'all heard about Hispanic on Hispanic crime? I'll wait. Anybody? 9 o'clock news. Asian on Asian crime. Those rates are ridiculous. Anybody hear about the problem with Hmong on Hmong crime in Milwaukee? On the news? Native American on Native American crime. Now, none of y'all are raising your hands because have you heard this on the news? Have you heard this being talked about? No. Here's the thing. We know folks is doing dirt. We know people are killing people. And typically, folks kill folks they know. Unfortunately, that's how it normally works. And they kill people within the context of where they live. It's about where you live. African Americans kill African Americans because we segregated and we live around other black folks. White people kill other white people. Why? Because we segregated and they live around other white people. But you don't hear these phrases being utilized in our news or in our media or in anything else. But I do hear on a regular basis, the black on black crime in Chicago, something has to be done. I agree. Something got to be done about all the crime. Folks killing people, period, is wrong. But I want equality. So when we list that black on black crime number, I'm looking at my wife like, where your numbers at? Hey, come on. I know good and well y'all Latin kings and Latin queens is out here doing dirt. Where your numbers? Here's something else that we need to know. Crime is inextricably linked to poverty. This is why you have to know about this. Because as a church, we're going to be involved in situations of poverty. And many times, I had a lady say this the other day. She said, people trapped in the cycle of poverty will make decisions they wouldn't normally make. They would do things they wouldn't normally do. They're in survival mode. And it's not about long term. It's about making it through today. What do I need to do to make it through today to feed my kids and put a roof over my head? And when you're in cycles of poverty, you will make decisions that a smart person would say, you can't do that, thinking about yourself 6 months from now. But if you need to feed your baby right now, tonight, I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm not worried about 6 months from now. Black and brown people are more likely to live in poverty without the resources to get out. How do we give resources? How do we provide access to get out of generational poverty? We found out that statistics say from the African American community, 1 in 4 live at or below the poverty line. 1 in 4. For my Caucasian brothers and sisters, it's 1 in 13. So it makes sense that as I see black communities, if 1 in 4 are at poverty, I would probably see higher crime rates. And we talk about the crime, but are we talking about the underlying things that cause the crime? Or is Satan causing us to focus so much on the act that we ignore the roots? And he's a master of that. Hey, just look at what they're doing. But do you see them as real people in need of a savior, in need of a God, in need of opportunities, in need of resources, in need of love, in need of support? Because young people that grow up without love, without support, without resources typically end up committing crime. We know this. We know that in our country, white families have 6 times as much wealth. And the poverty rate for African Americans is almost 3 times higher. We know that for African Americans, 60% higher in unemployment rates. This is going all the way back to 1972. The numbers look eerily similar to when Martin Luther King was here, actually marching, trying to get us better. They look eerily similar to how they was when he started. People continue to talk about crime, but are we really going to address the root issue? I've heard people ask about racism working both ways. Let's talk about that for just a brief moment. Here's my definition of racism. So anytime I reference racism, anytime I talk about it, here's how I look at it. Racism is about authority, power, and intent. I have to have a position. I have to have authority. I have to be able to impede you. And I'm doing it solely because I don't like you based on your culture or your color. That's real racism. I have had that. I have experienced that. Most of my interactions have not been racism. A majority of them have been ignorance. Folks doing and saying stuff that's like, oh, Lord. I had a boss that called me colored one day. Oh, yeah, this is the stuff that I get to deal with. When I tell y'all in corporate America, the stuff that we deal with. Come on, y'all. Look, I ain't been colored for a long time. You took me back to the 50s. I wouldn't even lie then. Like, I had another brother. He did it in church. Because we be talking about, well, we don't need to talk about this in church because we're all Christians. No, most of my experiences of racism and extreme discrimination in church with other Christians, other pastors, doing and saying stupid stuff. And I'm like, oh, but we ain't supposed to worry about the church. No, the church is one of the #1 contributors. Why? Because people get together and think they can just say anything and everything because there's no knowledge. This brother, we was at a worship conference, out of all places. We had a worship conference, y'all. It's me and 3 of my other black friends. And this white guy come walking up, and he is in love with what's happening. In love. He's so excited, and he loved Jesus, and this is amazing, all these different nationalities here, and how we're worshiping, and the music, and it's so amazing, and I love being around colored people. This is so great. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, that was literally what I started doing. Whoa, 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 whoa. So my friends start laughing. And if you've been around black people long enough, when they start laughing, the next, get him, Jay, get him. Brother, I started whispering, brother, you can't call us colored. We was in Milwaukee in the inner city. This brother is in the middle of the inner city calling black folks colored. I said, man, I want you to make it home tonight. I am trying to save your life right now. As a brother in Christ, let me help you. We can be black. We can be African American. We can't be Negroes. We can't be colored. Don't do that. That will get you beat down. Because there's people outside this church that don't love you the way I do. And he was like, he was so apologetic. And he turned the shade of red. And I was like, well, maybe you could color people. I don't know. Like, that brother turned the shade of red that was so deep. He looked like that chair by the time he got through. And he started apologizing. And he was like, where I live. Now, you all, this was just like 3 years ago. This is not like 25 years ago. He was like, where I live, there are no black people. And this is actually how we refer to everybody. Everybody in my town calls African Americans coloreds. I said, brother, I'm going to help you out. So you at least take this back to your people. You tell them about me. Like, you need to get rid of that terminology because that term will destroy relationships. And you can walk in this church, and I'm not saying this has happened here. Thank God it hasn't. But what I am saying is utilizing wrong terminology will eliminate your opportunity to have a testimony. It'll eliminate the opportunity for you to represent Christ well. You'll be standing up here on the prayer line, and somebody that would have given their life to Christ will not because they remember you calling them colored 2 weeks ago. People have left churches. People have turned away from God. Making comments, making remarks. We have to be careful. Folks want to touch my daughter's hair, and I want to choke them out. Her hair is so different. Can I touch it? She is not a pet. No, you can't touch my daughter's hair. Well, why are you so? Let the black man come in here and start grabbing on white women's hair and see how long that work out. Can I touch your hair? Oh, this is so weird. This texture is so... Y'all laughing. I can't do that. Y'all, I would be under the jail. Well, people want to do that to my daughter. Oh, I've got a little mixed baby in my family. If you don't get away from my child. So for me, as a pastor who loves Jesus, I struggle going to certain places around other Christians. We can't be that place. People have to be able to show up here and feel loved regardless. What I love about this building and this church is we got so many different backgrounds. So many different people from so many different places, and we just let you be you, which is wonderful. Love each other, but be respectful. Think about the stuff you might say. This go for black folks too, because y'all know we'll definitely say some stuff. We'll make some comments and make some jokes and do stuff. Well, my white friends be like, that's a double standard. I'm like, yeah, it is, but you know. How come you get to say that and we can't? You just can't. You just can't. You just don't get to. I'm sorry. You just don't. I don't know. It's just how it is. But we've got to do a better job of acknowledging those realities and being mindful, because I have news for you. Multiculturalism is a giving up of myself for the better of the whole. And all of us have to give up something if this is going to work, if this is going to really work well. So when we talk about racism working both ways, I struggle a bit because when you look at economic power, we see that 85.5% of wealth is owned in Caucasian households. When we look at governmental power, we see that, and this was back in 2020, elected officials were 90% Caucasian, members of Congress 78%, our governors 94%. Corporate power structure, Fortune 500 CEOs, there were 3 out of the 500. Senior leadership, 3.2% were African American, and the executives and board members were 85% Caucasian. So it's hard, you all, for us to be racist. Can we be? Sure. But you got to find a place where we actually fully in control, where we're the dominant culture of that area, of that space, where we can use our power and our authority to impede your progress just because you're white or Hispanic or whatever. Does that happen? Sure. Where that counts. We don't own banks. We can't stop you from buying houses. We don't own most of the businesses. We can't stop you from purchasing. We can't stop you from building. We can't stop you from getting education. We can't pass, y'all, look, we couldn't pass a law to get lynching changed to a federal crime. If we had power, don't y'all think we would have did that? At least. So there's things that we can't get into. And when I explain this, I had some folks get mad at me. Well, Pastor, I've had racism happen to me. I'm like, where? I had somebody, I wanted to slap them so bad. I did not slap them. They were like, well, yeah, but I can't go to Compton and walk around either. Why would you want to go to Compton? Like, come on, bro. That's not an apples to apples comparison. I want to go to Libertyville, okay? I want to go where it's nice. I want to go where it's clean. I want to go where the crime rate is like 0. I want to go to a place where they have picnics in the park, where the slide is actually clean all the way down. I want to go to places where they have Ravinia and they've got jazz and I want to go places like that. You want to compare that to Compton? It's not the same. But those are some of the things that I get. So we have to be careful even in our comparisons. I had a guy, I was telling him about some things that happened to me. Oh yeah, same things happened to me growing up. I got beat up by all the black guys. I was like, yes, and then you moved. And that problem ended, right? Well, yeah. You moved. You made a decision to go to some place where that didn't happen. I got news for you. I'm black wherever I go. People see me coming. I can't hide it. I can't mask it. I can't just move and not be black. I don't get that option. And I've been treated a certain way based on that. And y'all, I've done everything humanly possible to not be a statistic. Everything I can think of. I'm educated. I got a degree. I didn't have a child till I was married. I didn't have a baby till I was 37. People was confused, like, you're black and you don't have children? Yes. Some of us do wait. These are reality. I took my wife. Our first date was to Chuck E. Cheese. I met a guy there. He was so confused when I told him I had no children. Now, thinking back, 2 grown folks running around Chuck E. Cheese. He probably was asking me for different reasons, but. Right. Come here. Let me see your hair. No. But what we have seen is that African Americans and Native Americans have been portrayed in the media as less than human, savage, and wild throughout our history, in the movies, on the news. And I got news for you. Subconsciously, that has affected us as a nation, all of us. Let me show you something here. This is the power of white perspective. So I've shown you that even if you look at our media conglomerates, most of those are not owned by minorities. So there are certain agendas that are being pushed, and if you're not careful, you'll get caught up in these, and you won't see people the way God intended them. But here's the issues that I had as I started studying these things. Maybe you've seen this before, but none of you are this old. Back in the 1800s, it was normal to have, this is a newspaper clipping, Negroes for sale. And alongside the Negroes for sale, they're also selling a wagon and some donkeys and some other stuff. But this is how we used to be advertised, just for sale. Hey, we got some strong black folks for sale. Come purchase them, put them to work. And you can see if this was normal, even as a kid growing up, you would start picturing certain people as a certain way. Maybe you don't understand that back in the day, lynchings were a main event. This is a young man, actually with a mental health issue. And I blocked it out because you don't need to see it. His lynching, over 10,000 people came out to watch it. They put on their Sunday best. They brought their children. They took photos. They cut pieces off of him and kept them as souvenirs. He was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman. They never proved it. And a mob came and took him, and this is what happened. And postcards were made out of these pictures and sent all over the nation. You can go into gas stations and buy lynching postcards. Look this up on Google. Type in lynching postcards and scare yourself half to death of what our nation used to be like. And you will see writings on some of those cards. Hey, we had ourselves a great barbecue today. And it would show a burning black body. These are things that have happened. For some of us within our parents' lifetime, within our grandparents' lifetime, some of them were witnesses to some of this stuff. The power of media, the power of putting things out. A minstrel show, I told you about that with Jim Crow. This is what that would look like. It would be people dressing up and putting on blackface and emulating, in their minds, the African American community. This might blow your mind. This is a game that they used to play. This open space, they would put a hole here, and a black person or a Hispanic person or a black and brown person would put their head through here, and they would give them 3 baseballs. And the goal was to, you can read the sign. The goal was to hit the person in the face with the baseball. That's how you won a prize. People were maimed, people were sent to the hospital, people died. This was a normal occurrence. Can I tell you how normal this was? This was back in 1940. This was in the YMCA summer catalog. Come on out with us and hang with our carnival that we have. Normalized. Nobody saw anything wrong with this. We're going to publish this and put this out because this is okay. It was so normalized that I remember watching Popeye play. Some of us grew up watching Popeye. I know I did. I tried spinach because of this man. Realized he lied. And I remember watching this one time and asking my mom, what is that he's throwing those balls at? And she wouldn't really get into a conversation with me about it. I thought it was some type of little animal. I didn't realize that was supposed to be me. Cartoons, normalization, visuals, just seeing stuff and not really thinking about it, just going into your subconscious. And before you know it, not because you chose to be discriminatory, subconsciously you've had so many things placed on you and put in front of you and so many images that you subconsciously make different decisions about different people. Now, how many of you all have played the African dip game? Come on now, I know some of y'all have played the African dip. The African dip, this was like a carnival major thing. Y'all done played the African dip. You played the African dip game? Because see, when they first created it, they would take African Americans and they would put them on a platform and put a target next to it, and they would tell people, throw this ball. But it wasn't lukewarm water they was dropping people in. It would be ice cold, be dirt, manure, bugs, whatever demeaning thing they decided they wanted to use that day, and that was a carnival attraction. Normalized to such an extent that we sell these machines now. We rent them and don't think nothing about it. But that's the origin of it. And the next time you see one, it's going to mess with your mind. Because you're going to be like, I know where that came from. And this is why knowledge is power, because if you don't understand the origin of some things like this help me gain a different perspective. They help me see people different. They help me better understand, because again, my family grew up looking at stuff like this. This is the stuff that's been passed down. These are the stories that have been told. And as you're evangelizing and you're going out into the workforce, or you're going into your grocery stores or whatever, these are the things that make a difference. I'm going to end here. I want to show you this video, and then I'm going to ask for questions. I'm going to ask for you to tell me how you felt about this video. And we're going to end here. So check this out.
Ask yourself why. These are the black stories we've been shown. A narrow view that limits our understanding. But there's so much more to see. Let's widen the stream so we can widen our view.
And I'm going to end here. But the first time I saw this video, I nearly cried, if I'm being completely honest with you. I know more families that look like this than I know of anything else. I know some families that's doing some dirt. Don't get me wrong. There's some folks doing some stuff. But when I look at how specifically African Americans are typically portrayed in media and on TV and in movies and on the news and everything else, I know more families that look like this. When I started hanging out with my wife's family, I saw Hispanic culture very different. It's one thing to look at it. It's another thing to live in it. It's another thing to be welcomed inside and to gain knowledge about all of the differences and the things that make us wonderful creations of God. We have an opportunity here at this church to learn so much about each other. I've experienced things and conversations with some of you here that I've never had before, and I am a better person for it. The love we get to share here is going to make a difference in this county. Amen. My job as a pastor is to help you see everybody the way God sees them. Amen. We got to get rid of some of the things that are in the back of our minds, some of the things that have been subconsciously driven, some of the things that have gone on. We've got people here that have testimonies that are mind-blowing, things of how they've grown up. We've got people here. I've got one gentleman that attends here, and his father was a Klansman. His father was. And he attends here with a black pastor. And we hug every week, and he's like, if my dad knew about this. And his dad passed some years ago. But there's people who are making choices to do things differently. And I got news for you. You don't know who they are when you meet them. So love them. When new people come here, love them. Bypass some of them faces you know. They gonna be here, they ain't going nowhere. Find them new faces. Embrace them. Make them feel welcome. Ask them about themselves, where they come from, what their kids' names are. Do they live in the area? Do they need help? Are there things that we can be in prayer for them about? Ask them about their culture. Ask them questions. Learn. It's every person I meet here is an opportunity to learn. Amen. Every person. Grandma Nancy, I remember the first time I met you.
I remember the first time I met you.
Come on. I walked in the door, that woman hugged me, and she gave me a word straight from God on day one. I didn't even know who she was. She was just like, my name is Grandma Nancy. I'm your new grandma. You are here to lead us out into the streets. And I was like,
This crazy white woman out of here.
hey, I was like, I need more like you. In the conversations we've had and the inbox messages that she sends and the encouragement that comes across, like, it's needed. I can't express to you, and that's just one example. There's so many relationships in this room. If I just went around, I could point out people who are not my color, not my culture, but you're absolutely my family. Amen. And we get to create something completely brand new here that most churches are trying to figure out, and we've already got it. A church where every nation, every tribe, and every tongue is worshiping and praising Jesus. It's a picture of the end. It's a picture of what John saw in Revelation. We get to be a start of that.